what does it take? Like, if people want to do the type of computer statistics and software type work you do they need a super fancy setup?
No. Yeah, no, I'd say probably not. You can do a lot through things like Google Colab. And I think we might have talked a little bit about that before, but it's similar to Google Docs and Google Slides, and then it's hosted in Google Drive.
Can you show us that?
Yeah, of course.
I can imagine our audience being like interested in knowing if they wanted to do all the types of stuff that we've shown them over the past few weeks and months. Like, what sort of setup do they need to have, and do they need to have a special computer, and yeah, like all that basic stuff.
Yeah, you know, you can use any programming language or software you want to do the analysis and really, break down the data that you come across, or, in some cases that you want to find. Maybe other countries don't necessarily have the practices as ingrained across the entire country. And so, you might want to be collecting this data, let's say Italy, for example. You might want to gather information on, any animal-related information in terms of welfare across the country.
Yeah, I could see that. I know that initially when we started first working together, I felt like it required a lot of high-tech programming, and it does. I still believe that. It sometimes does to get it to the level that you're working at, but I also feel like there's a lot of middle area where the regular person can also, really capture some of this information and data. So, okay, so what are we looking at here?
So we're looking at a Colab notebook. And, this is basically a way that you can execute Python code in cells, little cell blocks. So we start out with one cell block that is a Python, executable Python code block. And so we can do things like create a variable, which would just be a word, which would be name, something like Jothi, right? So we can execute that. I just hit Shift or Enter. And it took a little bit because we're not actually running this on our computer. Yes, it's in the browser and we get to work with this environment. And in that sense, it's ours, but we're not running it on our own computer. It is being run on a computer in the cloud that's sending back and forth this information with you. So that's one of the reasons why all you need is a Google account and to get into and learn a little bit about Google Colab and how that works. And so you can use any computer that has access to the internet to be able to run this. There's definitely some limitations and some things you might want to do with more computing power, but those will be things that you'll learn through the process, and you can do so much just from here.
Okay.
So this is, sorry.
Go ahead, give us an example. I'm curious.
I was just saying this is pretty basic, but we could do something like grab the data set from Austin Animal Care. So I'm just going to do Austin Animal Care intake and outcome data on the internet, and Kaggle gives you a link to this, but we want to find the data link so we can download it directly. And so this is where we would pause and kind of break, and in the editing, would break because we just need, these little things here.
Yes. But it also shows how long it takes to actually pull something up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's true. Austin animal care intake data, and then we want the government link, not.
And I'm not seeing your screen, so just go ahead and keep doing what you're doing because I think you're on a different window. But it's up to you if you want to share.
Yeah, I'm on a different window.
But I don't worry about it once you pull it over. The idea is that you're pulling, the reason you chose Austin's data is because it's all available to the public online. You pulled the link over, I see it now. And
yeah, so I got the link and I'm just gonna create it as a variable, which is the string. And then we would want to do something where we can download this as a file. And so, this is an open source package called Pandas, which is used for a lot of data analysis. And so, what I think is probably going to work here is that if we just say, let's just read CSV and let's just give it the URL to download the file. I don't know if that's going to work, but it might. It did.
nice.
So here's the file. We could do something like, we could say, okay, these are all of our different fields that we have, and we could do something like just simply print out a really messy version of counting up all of the different occurrences of a specific field, in this case, breed. So some of the data points that they have are animal ID, which is the unique ID of each animal, and that is usually going to be assigned by the database system, whether that be PetPoint or Chameleon or Shelter Love, Shelter Buddy, Shelter Manager, whatever it is. They need to have this ID here, and that helps you track, which animal it was, because animals may have multiple intakes and multiple outcomes. That's very likely, especially if they're going through the foster cycle or the foster path, at any point in their lifetime. So being able to keep track of that animal ID is pretty important there, even though it looks like a bunch of numbers. We have name here first, date, time that they entered the intake, the month, year, which also looks like it's the same data type. So we have some date times here we can use, and we have the location that they were found, and that looks like it's coming in as a address separated by the word in and the city and state where it happened. And so we could look at a way to try to get more information out of this and break this group down. This would be an example of a field you might want to look further into when looking into locations, especially with intakes. Where are stray animals coming from? That can help you answer, especially because intake type right here, one of the most common for a lot of shelters is stray intake type. And so you might as well look at what those are. Yeah, so in this data set that we downloaded, which should be updated as of today, there's 84,247 stray animals, 23,000 of them, not of them, 23,000, over 23,000 were surrendered by their owner. And we also have fields for public assist, wildlife, euthanasia request, and abandoned. Very low numbers here.
I'm curious, this data that you pulled over, is there a time frame that it's from? Because 84,000 sounds like quite a lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we could take our intake date, and it's probably going to be a string. Well, actually, I'm not sure. We can see. But we can do things like look at the maximum value, but it looks like we need to take date time. So it has a different name because Austin Animal Care puts that information out. So the maximum time was the end of 2019. So I wonder if they stopped uploading that information. Either way, this is a good data set to work with. But we can also look at what that minimum time was. And this goes all the way back, intakes since 2014.
Okay, so this is between 2014, the 1st of January 2014 to the December 31st, 2019, when we're looking at those 84,000 strays that came in. Okay, a nice quick way to be able to pull up some data and play around with it. Is there anything else you'd like to show us with using this particular program or data set?
Yeah, I think what I was going to try to do here is just break it down by year and look at that. So just taking that value for everybody, which is an intake date time, and saying we want to look at that, but just by the year that it happened and not by much else. And we could just make it a variable for that. That'll be easier. It worked.
Okay, there we go.
So we're sorting here by not year, but the number of intake records. And it looks like we have 2013 intake records for sure, 2014, but not very many in 2020. So, but it looks like there are 2020 records. So the min and max may not have worked properly since we didn't convert to a date time format. And we can talk more about that. If anybody has questions, put those down in the comments below, and then I'll make another video on that. But now that we've recalculated it, we can look again, and it's going to be more accurate. Because what it was doing before was it was sorting the strings for these, not actually sorting date values. So that would be one step, that it looks like it's working, but you're not necessarily getting the right values out. You're sorting max and min values of a string. So 9/16, it looks like it's updated as of today. I think it was this morning. Well, no, it was 5 p.m., 5 or 2. This is in Mountain Standard Time?
Yeah.
Central Time?
Or Central Time.
Central Time.
Central Time. So just a couple hours ago. So that tells me, can we look back at the 2020 numbers for a minute? And that, oh, you've already got graphs going.
The 2020 numbers?
Yep. Where it broke it down. So for 2020, if there's only 6,960, which is what you have there, that speaks to, we're not at the end of the year, but it also speaks to the decrease in intake that's happened these past months. And I wonder if that's reflected here. I'm not sure if that's something that if that's the reason why we're seeing the numbers we're seeing.
Right.
Or if there's some other reason in the way that they're posting. But I do know that throughout the country during COVID, we've seen a dramatic decrease in intake into the sheltering system. So it's a question of what do these numbers reflect, and do they have perhaps another system that's tracking fosters or other numbers?
That's a good question. I wonder, so we would have to go to the intakes and outcomes section, or at least the outcomes, and we would have to aggregate between the intakes and outcomes. But what we could do here is we could also do month. And we can look. And we can look at intake month, just as we did there. It looks like we've dropped the amount. So this is overall, how, what the most common months are for our intakes for all the years. That's less interesting, but what we could do is this. We could use something called a string format time, which allows us to specify the format of the date time. So date or time. In this case, I want full year, month, and date in that format. So if we reevaluate this, which, that should work. Intake month. So now we can't see everything. Okay, that didn't work either. I'm also getting a call on my watch.
That works in that we can see that the number came in, looks like on an actual particular date in 2014, July 9th. Well, it doesn't, I'm not sure it speaks to that, but.
Was that? And then done here.
Yep.
And then we can.
It's interesting to see all the different sequences that you're putting through and the different commands, and probably not something for everyone, but, but if you're a programmer and you're interested in looking at data, this is going to be a very good way to look at it.
Okay. So this really needs to be sorted by date.
Yeah, this is the actual day and the number of animals that came in on any given day. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, we're looking by month and the number of intakes per month. Wow, there's so many in here.
Oh, well, it seems to
be.
Wait,
this is all for days.
Days. That's right. What it's saying.
Okay.
Individual days. And
so it's because I did this. Let's just do that and then reevaluate. There we go.
That might be better. Yeah. Okay, so now we're at months. So the month with the greatest number of intakes was June of 2015, with 2,189 animals coming in that month. What we were looking at before was an actual day in time with the most intakes sorted with every single day for the past few years. So.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of, what computers can do when you kind of mess around with it. Even in this virtual environment notebook, we can just write like that, just calculate, for every month, how many intakes were in a given month or any day, even as we saw.
Yeah, that's pretty neat to see how how simple it is actually, because sometimes it can be really complicated to try to pull up those types of numbers and get that comparison, or even have it rank ordered when we're using, Chameleon or PetPoint or whatever system we're using. If we don't have a report available to pull it, it's nice to be able to manipulate the numbers ourselves. Thank you for going through that, Ross. That's really nice.
Yes, of course.
We'll probably.
I know that, it probably, not much of it was probably very, entertaining at all. None of it was, but then useful. So, I think it was at least fun to share a little bit about, at least what I am excited about and what I like, and how some of the tools that I use.
And I have a feeling there's probably somebody out there who thinks it's super cool. So.
Yes, somebody's got to think it's cool.
Okay, well, thank you very much.